The country of Sweden is perhaps the best in Scandinavia for roller coasters. Amazingly, they only have a lineup of 37 coasters, which is less than the southern half of my home state, California. But there's a lot of good stuff in Sweden, and it's mainly concentrated between a group of 3 parks. You've got Lisberg in the heart of Gothenburg, Groland in the heart of Stockholm, and Kolmården Zoo outside of Norrköping. On my most recent trip to Europe, I had the opportunity to visit each of these locations, and today I'll be doing my countrywide top 10 roller coasters list. But I do have several significant honorable mentions that would have made this list if I'd ridden them. First and foremost, during my visit to Groland, 2 major coasters were closed. Jetline, a Schwarzkopf Zero family thrill coaster, and Twister, a Gravity Group family wooden coaster. These may not be the most intense rides out there, but I've heard really good things and I'm bummed I didn't get to ride them. I also wasn't able to make time for any of the small parks in Sweden, and they happen to have some roller coasters that probably would have made my top 10 as well. Furuvik is about a 2-hour drive north of Stockholm and is home to a handful of family coasters, including the new Vekoma double launch coaster Lightning. Then Skara Summerland, located somewhere between Gothenburg and Stockholm, is the location of Tranen, the only SNS free flight coaster in the world. It's an extremely unique ride, and that alone likely would have gotten it on here. Last thing I'll mention is Groland recently announced the addition of a high-intensity Vekoma launch coaster, which looks to me like it could be one of the best roller coasters in Sweden. Clearly, there's a lot to look forward to, and this list will absolutely be due for an update in the coming years. But for now, I'm just going to focus on my 10 favorite coasters I got to ride in the country, so let's go ahead and get started. First, with number 10, Wildemusen at Groland. We're going to start this list with a string of family coasters, and Wildemusen is a very nice one. It was manufactured by Gerstlauer and is their bobsled model. Think Wild Mouse, but with more dynamic elements. I think it's really cool how they built this layout so far off the ground, even though there's no drops that are all too big. I also think it's great that they intertwined it with the track of Jetline, which probably would have been really cool if both rides were operating during my visit. Wildemusen likely would have gone a few spots higher if it were a bit smoother. Not that it's bad, but the next 2 rides we'll be talking about are far more comfortable experiences. Number 9, Luna at Lisberg. Vekoma family boomerang coasters have taken the European amusement industry by storm. You can find these at parks all over the continent, and I have not once gotten tired of these things. Sure, they aren't the most intense, but I can still appreciate how smooth they are, and the fact that it travels forwards and backwards is great. Luna is a fantastic stepping stone coaster for younger guests, and I'm sure it'll get a lot of them excited about riding bigger ones in the future. Number 8, Kastan at Groland. Speaking of Vekoma family coasters, Kastan has a similar intensity to that of Luna, except riders are positioned underneath the track. I had ridden exact replicas of this at other parks in North America, but I don't think those are nearly as good as Groland's for a variety of reasons. 1, the theming is great, and 2, the interactivity with nearby rides and buildings makes the layout feel much more unpredictable. It just goes to show how a little extra effort can make a family coaster that much better. But this is where the list really begins. You'll notice a major jump in intensity here, and that's because it's where most of the family coasters I missed would have been positioned. As much as Wildemusen, Luna, and Kastan are all solid, they really don't belong on a top 10 with rides like the ones we have coming up. So at number 7 is Insane at Groland. The Intamin Zackspin coaster is a very divisive coaster model. Some enjoy these rides and others don't at all. Going in, I was intrigued by what my stance would be, and I'm happy to say I'm a big fan of Insane. It's not the type of coaster I could re-ride over and over again, but I definitely appreciate the intensity of it. The way this ride works is your seats have the ability to rotate freely throughout the layout. There's 2 instances of the ride where you might flip upside down, but it's always the final element that delivers the most extreme sensation. It's one of those rare roller coasters that can get away with being short because any longer and it might be a bit too insane. I'm so sorry, I thought that pun would be good. But at number 6 is Lisberg Banan at Lisberg. You know, I may not have gotten to ride Jetline and Groland, but I did get to experience a very similar ride on the other side of the country. Lisberg Banan was designed by Schwarzkopf and built by Zier, and you really get the best of both worlds here. It is absolutely one of the best family coasters I've ridden because its layout is extremely unique. You follow the terrain so well that every time you think it might be close to ending, you start building up more speed to get you through some additional elements. It's really that perfect roller coaster for both families and thrill seekers alike, which is why I think it's the most underrated ride on this entire list. Number 5, Valkyrie at Lisberg. If this dive coaster was like most, I'd probably have ranked Lisberg Banan higher, but as much as I was tempted, this was a really strong layout. Valkyrie falls in that mini dive coaster category, which I think works to its advantage. It's one of those rare rides by Bolliger and Mabillard that feels like it's focused around pacing. You travel from one element to another seamlessly, and there's not many instances where you slow down at all. And when you do, it's meticulously done to deliver hang time like that final Heartline roll. Top that off with a beautiful color scheme, nice theming, and a silky smooth ride experience, and you've got yourself a fantastic dive machine. Number 4, Monster at Groland. If you followed along with our theme park vlogs across Sweden, you'll know Monster was the most surprising roller coaster we rode in the country. I knew it would be a fun ride, don't get me wrong, but looking at it from off-ride, it just didn't seem like it was going to be up my alley like some other inverted coasters. But yeah, I couldn't have been more wrong. I absolutely loved Monster because where it lacked in intensity, it made up for in near-miss elements. More than half of this ride experience feels like you're narrowly dodging buildings, rides, and even the water on that first drop, which is one heck of a way to start the ride. I'll be curious to see if that new Vekoma they're working on will top Monster because this is already a terrific standout coaster for Groland. Number 3, Boulder at Lisberg. This is what I'd consider to be a simple concept with phenomenal execution. Boulder's layout consists of nothing more than bunny hills and turns, but the amount of airtime you get is out of this world. I actually wasn't sure how much I'd love this ride because I knew it wasn't going to have too diverse of a layout. But where some might consider it repetitive, I loved the different airtime moments so much that I could have cared less. The only downside for me were the turns that you travel through were quite slow. They aren't bad per se, but I think if you went through them with a bit more speed, this could have turned out to be my favorite roller coaster in the park. Instead, I give that title to my number 2 coaster in Sweden, Helix at Lisberg. Personally, I give this ride the edge for having the most variety of any coaster in the country. It may not be my absolute favorite, and it's hardly my second favorite, but there's something to be said about how creative this layout is and how they were able to build it into the hillside. Even though it's got an impressive 4,500 feet of length, Helix feels longer than that because there are so many different elements with varying forces. My favorite moments are the sustained ejector airtime on the 2 camelbacks, but there's also 7 great inversions and some whippy transitions. Definitely a fantastic ride experience, and there's a reason it's one of the most famous roller coasters anywhere in Europe. But coming in at number 1, by a pretty sizable margin honestly, is Wildfire at Kolmården. This may be the only thrill ride in the park, but you know what? It made it well worth our time to visit this remote zoo in Sweden. Manufactured by Rocky Mountain Construction, Wildfire gets to claim the title of the tallest wooden roller coaster in the world, featuring the most inversions on any wooden coaster in the world. Your first impression of this ride is awesome because of how they perch the lift hill Helix and drop atop a hill. I can remember how pumped I was to ride this thing, and I have to say, it's one of those rides that absolutely delivers. You just gotta make sure to give it some time to warm up because otherwise some of the elements in the second half can feel a little slow. But I can assure you, everything in the first half is perfect and some of the best work RMC's ever done. I literally can't think of a single element before the 0G roll that isn't a minimum of 9 out of 10. Pair that with the beautiful setting and look of the ride, and it's no wonder why Wildfire is my favorite roller coaster in the country of Sweden. If you've been to any of these parks, let me know what your favorite coaster was and which are on your bucket list. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed, and if you'd really like to support the channel, subscribing and checking out my new merchandise store is the best way to do so. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.